Greetings and welcome to this exclusive discussion on how gig workers are changing the industry for the better. The gig economy has ballooned in recent years as our technology innovations arrive to tackle nearly every facet of the global industry. With the hybrid and remote work culture becoming the mainstream, a newly discovered pathway has opened up for both employees and employers. These new age workplaces have given a much needed push to the gig economy, leading to many unusual opportunities for organizations and individuals, which is not bounded by geographies anymore. The lack of labor capacity in skilled workers and the rise of the gig economy suggest one core constant that the nature of work is changing and businesses need to be prepared to support that change. Aligned to this very thought, ETHRWorld and BetterPlace are delighted to welcome you all today at this webinar on decoding how gig workers are changing the industry for the better. I am Apeksha Kaushik, Senior Content Producer at ETHRWorld, and joining me today at this webinar, we have Sunil Ranjan, SVP and Director, HR and MS, LG Electronics Limited, Amit Chincholikar, Global CHRO, Tata Consumer Products Limited, and Nilab Kapoor, COO, Workforce Fulfillment and Enterprise Operations, BetterPlace. Welcome, Sunil, Amit, and Nilab.
Thank you, Apeksha.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone.
So good to have you all here at this discussion. So we'll straight away begin with the discussion, and I'll put forth my first question to the panel here, which is open to all three of you. But Sunil, if we can start with you. So the question is, what is your take on this wave of the gig economy that we are experiencing at the moment?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. As to the first question, as to what is my take on this current wave of gig economy, my first point that I'd like to make that what this wave that we are seeing right now is going to become a mini tsunami in the next 3 to 5 years time. The point that I'm trying to make, while I may sound cliched, I may sound pretty dramatic, but the point that I'm trying to make is the growth that we are going to witness in this gig economy workers is just going to explode. I'll just like to quote some figures from the Niti Aayog report, which I was reading some time back. We have about 7.5 million gig workers in India, and in the next 5 to 7 years, we are going to see them somewhere about 25 million. So from 1.5% of our population, of working population, is going to become somewhere near about 5%. So why is this going to happen? Because the basic premise and the paradigms on which the work was being structured around is going to change. We are going to see much more gyrations in our economies. We're going to see many changes which we will not be able to predict in real time, which calls for industry to kind of scale up their workforce, reduce their workforce. So having gig workers on your as a part of your manpower plan, as a part of your working population, is going to give you the flexibility that the industry was wanting for a long time. So that's one reason. Secondly, I'm sure most of you would have heard that Indian government has announced the new labor codes. Anyway, they're going to be enacted. They have been passed in the parliament, and they're going to be enacted very soon, probably by April next year. So once that happens, we will get more flexibility to hire temp workers, gig workers, platform workers in areas which till now were not allowed by the law. So that's why I'm saying this is a very interesting times for all HR professionals, for businesses, whereby we can get that flexibility what we have been wanting for a long time. So these are some of my initial thoughts on this subject.
Thank you, Sunil. Amit, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, sure. So I think Sunil has rightly called out, not just the numbers in terms of where is it that we are kind of headed. I think three parameters are really defining this, right? One is the whole concept of flexibility. So I think waking up to this idea, and the last couple of years has kind of brought this alive, is that the whole concept of, especially if you're a gig worker on a platform-based job, right? It really can be done from anywhere. That is point number one. The second is the whole remote-based application, which is saying that even if you're not on a platform job, your demand could be much higher in cities that otherwise have not existed. So, I mean, if you look at where is the highest demand that you're going to be seeing in the next 3 to 5 years in India, I mean, it'll surprise you. The three cities that this is expected most is Mysore, Kanpur, and Bhopal. Now, given that this is the kind of reach that you're going to get to, and I'm a firm believer that India resides India doesn't live in Mumbai, Delhi, or Bangalore, right? India resides in Rehala, Behala, Shambhupura. So so two concepts. One is the whole fact of technology enabling this. B, I think people seeking more flexibility. I mean, with more women, coming in, especially given that we had a little bit of a fallout, particularly of that that portion of the workforce in the last couple of years. So, like I said, one is technology. The second is flexibility, and the third is seasonality, right? Which says now like a couple of platforms are going to be having these sales that come up, right? And you'll suddenly find from a seasonality perspective that the demand for deliveries, the last mile operation is going to go up pretty significantly. So you'll find a lot of this cyclicality that's coming in. And I think, like Sunil really called out, it's a great time because now the flexibility is available, through this platform for you to hire people on terms that are mutually acceptable for a short-term basis, and really provide a fairly strong bump up from an economic perspective. So that's the way I would see it.
Sure. Thank you, Amit. Nilab, your perspective there.
Yeah, thanks, Apeksha. Thanks, Sunil and Amit, for providing this perspective. So completely agree with what the other panelists are saying. One, definitely, there is a lot of upside available in terms of numbers. Niti Aayog is one report which I shared it. If you will go across other reports like DCG, they're also talking about the same kind of numbers. And secondly, very rightly and aptly put by both, that this will, as a tsunami, not only be restricted to the top 7 cities. We will see a much wider depth and width in terms of tier 2, tier 3 cities, to a level propelled by the fact that how our platform organizations are reaching these cities. Work from home is also helping it, because a lot of workers or a lot of white collar jobs today are still out of Mysore and other locations from where workers are working in. What we need, definitely, I think we are at an early stage, is to try and also address it in terms of how the supply is, in terms of diversity, how we are able to also go beyond delivery. Because once we will start it, agreed, the context is pretty well set by the platform players like ride-hailing apps or food tech companies. It started with deliveries and operations. But what we are seeing, because we are service providers to a lot of organizations and also specialize on the gig side, is that this is solidifying beyond that into a much stronger wave. Definitely, there is a spurt in demand in logistics and operations. But there is also other demand coming in from sales and marketing in fintech, green shoots available in FMCG or retail companies, where the age-old problem of variabilization of demand exists in different pockets in different ways. One can be seasonal, some can be more traffic during weekends compared to on a daily basis. So with technology and this adoption becoming higher, it's a much solid wave that we are seeing. The way I see, will also witness more organizations not only looking at it from a business perspective, that will stay the core reason, but also working towards worker success. And that will become crucial as we scale, where it means better environment for these workers, even if they are remote, trying to create touch points and ensuring higher earning potential to the worker. Enhancing their earning potential will be crucial as we go scale and we become diverse and wide.
Sure, thank you, Nilab. So we did talked about the the scope and spread of the wave, actually, the tsunami we all talked about here. So Sunil, I would like to come back to you here and ask you if you can highlight the top 2-3 factors that are propelling this wave, and how do you think organizations can create a well-balanced workplace setup for the gig workers?
Okay, I'll answer this question in 2 parts. The first part being, what are the 2-3 reasons, or the reasons why we are seeing the shift? And then I'll come to the second part later about what do we need to be doing about it. So if I just take the insights very confined to my industry, okay, I belong to the fast moving consumer durables industry. Now, if I was to see 3-4 years back, my business, only about 3 to 5% was coming from, how should I say, the traditional sales channel. And today, when I see, it has already shifted to about 14-15%. So what it means is I am having a new channel which I need to exploit for my business purposes. So that's the online channel, which you all know about it. So that channel itself is giving me the reach. I'm now able to reach 95% of the pin codes, which my physical, my shops, my retail outlets could only reach about 60% of India. So because of this greater coverage, and then this, the business changing from offline to online, I have a whole new set of requirements, be it the last mile connectivity guys, be it the service guys, be it the people who are kind of marketing it in a new way on these platforms. So this whole new set of people who have to be brought in, and most of them, I would say about 70-75% of them are from the so-called defined categories of gig workmen. So that is one. There is a business shift where businesses are going, they're going to towns which were not covered earlier. So because of the greater reach, you need those kind of people being onboarded. The second thing which I see happening, we had these so-called defined job descriptions, job roles, which were reserved for a certain class. Okay, this job is a permanent job, this job is a temporary job. Now that line between that permanent job and the uh, temp jobs are actually going pretty fine because of seasonality, because of specializations, because of sudden scaling up and scaling down of businesses. So now you're having a third kind of a job, which is emerging, what my people in sales and marketing are calling the Stepney jobs, or they have given their own names, but typically mentioning people that whom I have to bring in for a short span of time, and then I take care of the business. So the roles are getting redefined. You are earlier, people are now more open to having temps or gig workers in roles which traditionally 3 years back our people would just say that I need a full-time resource on this job. So that is a second change. And third, which is actually I see is a more of a social phenomena. Earlier, there were a lot of stigma associated with part-time jobs and gig jobs, and you're working from home. This guy doesn't have a job, he's not permanently placed. So those kind of social changes where these jobs are getting accepted, whether it is blue-collar jobs, whether it is the gray-collar jobs, or the white-collar jobs. So these are 2-3 changes which I am seeing, which is fueling this fire of gig workers from a wave to a tsunami. So that's how I see. These are the 3 reasons.
Sure. Thank you,
Okay,
Sunil.
so that's my part. So when other panel, then we can come to the second part later, I guess.
Okay, sure. So Nilab, if you can take up the first one, and then we'll again go back to Sunil for the second, answering the second part.
Agree. So some of them Sunil has already covered, but I'll try and provide my take on it, which would be perhaps wider beyond one industry, because as a practitioner, we serve a number of industries. So definitely, one is technology. The democratization of technology and its adoption itself has opened a wide arena. 5 years back, we would not know that somebody can just find at a 20-30 meter accuracy way to deliver an order or way to pick up an order. That itself has propelled this entire economy, which is there. So if you look at it from an organization's perspective, they are able to aggregate consumer demand, the platform, and at the other place also have a large number of gig workers and act as a marketplace to ensure a specific slot or a specific order is served in a certain way. And on the workers' perspective, on the other side, they are able to also aggregate in their own mind and with their own calculations how that will ensure that they make a certain amount of good money or good buck by the end of the day. Second is variabilization of demand. 2 factors. One, it always existed. Even now or 5 years back, you walk down to a fashion retail outlet in the afternoon, and on a weekday, you will find there are more salespersons than consumers. And on the other side, you go over a weekend and you will find that it's jam-packed. And that's where organizations are also understanding that they need to have more flexible or hybrid models. It's beyond a point, a cement is not scalable. And this thought got accelerated during the last 2 years of pandemic, when the demand itself became varied based on how the governments and the state governments were implementing lockdowns. So that itself was a reason for acceleration of this. So this brought a need for flexible hybrid workforce. And lastly, very, very important point, which Sunil brought in, there is a much higher acceptance amongst workers. And I will not I will go specifically more, perhaps onto anecdotal examples that all of us would have come across. There is a Uber rider who's working in the evening in terms of, being at a counter as a counter sales executive, or you will find somebody with a stable semi-government or a warehouse job trying to do food delivery in the evening. So that itself has brought it interesting nuances where gig work itself becomes a job title or a kind of employment where people start looking at and calculating their earnings. There are success stories abound. If you try and interact with people who are on the gig, they will tell you success stories of how somebody made 75,000 or 100,000, which would be 4x or 5x what they would have made in a fixed job. So that also helps in propelling and accelerating this kind of environment.
Sure, Nila. Thank you. Sunil, if you would like to take up the next part of the question, which is on setting up workplaces, effective workplaces for the gig workers.
What I would just like to make a couple of points here, like what kind of setups we need. But frankly, we all know that this is not a new concept. This is not a new category of workers or a new category of workmen. We always had gig workers in some form or the other. Maybe we call them as temps, we call them as contractuals, and we were finding ways and means of having them on the workforce. This function of managing the whole gig workers in, say, I belong to the HR domain and we manage people of all categories. So this function of managing gig workers was always in the shadows of HR. When I say shadows of HR, if I bring in a fresh MBA from a good management college, if I take the options where you want to be, probably this would not even feature in the end of his textbook or not even in the list of the top 50 options. So the first thing that I feel as organizations we need to be changing is how are we managing these workers? Are we still considering them on the outliers, or are we still considering them on the fringes of our workforce? I think this mind shift we need to bring in amongst us. When I mean us, it is the people in the industry. They have to be seen more as a part of the mainstream workforce. That is one. Second, all the policies, systems, practices that we have in companies are actually oriented towards permanent workforce. Traditionally, that has been our route. So we need to have this shift whereby our policies are relooked at. We see it from a fresh perspective, which takes care of their aspirations. If he's a gig worker, he also has an aspiration that I would also like to grow in the organization. So I think we will have to reset many of our systems and processes of how we manage this workforce. The know-how has been there in manufacturing industries for a long time because probably 30-40% of the manpower was always in the so-called domain of in the definition of a gig worker. But sadly, the amount of time we have spent on promoting this function internally and developing capabilities has been, how should I say, in very nicely, not up to the mark. So we need to really have a relook at our complete people processes, especially seeing how they get aligned, how we take care of these people in the overall context and giving them the same experiences as we give to our permanent people. So that's my take on this.
Sure, Sunil. Thank you so much on that. We did, talked about the policy changes and all those aspects, and also building on that only, Amit, I would like to get your insights here. I would like you to put forth your perspective here on the kind of policy. So it is, we did talk about that the changes are required, but what kind of changes, if we can, talk in depth about a little more on that.
So I think very often it starts from, I think like Sunil did call out, I think a lot of our policies, for example, are either structured by grade or by level or by, whatever. So I think the first starting point really is, there are two things. One is we must understand that there are jobs that are temporary in nature. And there could be other jobs that are permanent in nature that are being manned by people who may be temporary in that particular role for a period of time. See, the second one is relatively easier to manage, right? Because we know where the job is pegged, where the job kind of sits. So therefore, I think the most important thing is being able to draw an equivalence. Now, from a larger perspective, I think the biggest change that's needed goes beyond the gig workers in some ways, because look, very often, particularly in the Indian workspace, we define the size of the cabin, the size of the cubicle, your entitlement in terms of, what type of travel can you undertake, etc., all based by level. I think honestly, once, with the advent of the gig economy, I think we've got to take a long, hard look at, what promotes. So what are collaborative workplaces? How is it that people are able to kind of work better, provide greater flex? So I think at the moment, a complete rethink on how some of these policies are constructed is kind of needed. I think fundamentally, most companies also have this policy of saying that, you cannot have, employment at more than one place at any given point in time. And I think the gig economy essentially is about, and I think we've spent some time discussing, people, the temp workforce and things like that. But I think there is a fairly large and a growing emergence that's there of professionally skilled, individuals who want to be on the gig workforce. So they'll work in a particular organization for a couple of days in a week, and somewhere else for another day, and somewhere else for another day, and end up maybe doing something that catches their fancy on the last day that is kind of coming through. Now, honestly, I think the policy construct at the moment is not really geared at any stage to deal with situations like this. So I think the biggest changes we'll need to actually make is to really break down things from a policy perspective, make things really simple. Because in a situation like this, we can either end up making it incredibly complex, which is you've got a set of policies for individuals, you'll have a set of policies for gig workers, you'll spend a lot of time drawing equivalents, all of that. And, by the time that happens, you would have lost the bus, you would have missed the bus, because so many other, contemporary employers would have gone ahead and quickly integrated things and kind of moved on. So I think the need of the hour would be to make things really simple. It would be to be able to understand that there is no distinction needed. So if you kind of have if you celebrate birthdays of your employees, you have to celebrate it for gig workers as well. So this whole concept of inclusivity, I think, will need to become incredibly important. And the earlier we are able to get that done, the better we'll be able to get, welcome, people who come in with this kind of mindset. Because the good thing that I've seen with folks of this nature is that they are in a very, because they work for a period of, limited period of time, their thinking is very structured, their output is very structured. So they're really keen to make an impact. Now, the best way to leverage that is just to make sure that they feel welcome. Right, you just treat them like everyone else, or the way you treat your regular employees. I think that is the starting point from a policy perspective. But I think from A to Z, we would pretty much need to, I would say, align, collaborate, and make everything really different. Starting, a lot of companies have got different email IDs also, right? For those who are whatever. I'm saying, what purpose does it accomplish? The purpose of an email is to communicate, right? Why do you need to make that distinction? So I think somewhere, I think the biggest policy change that we'll have to make probably is in our minds, is what I would say, Viksha.
Sure, Amit, thank you for pointing out that very basic and very, the biggest, actually, the challenge here. So, Sunil, if you would like to add on to some policy changes here, which you think would be beneficial.
Yeah, Apeksha, what I would like to say is now, right from, I'll just put it very simply, right from onboarding of these people till the time they exit, wherever we have whatever policies, we need to first include and recognize this category of workmen. You don't need to have two separate policies. You need to, okay, if you are having an onboarding program for your permanent people, you need to have a similar one, probably maybe a kind of a guerrilla orientation program where you take within very limited time and give them the values and the processes and systems that your company stands for. So right from your onboarding, your recruitment policies, the way you appraise them. Now, many of the organizations where I worked, they had a perfect performance management system for the regulars. Why not for the people who have come there, who have contributed to the organization, maybe sporadically or in between for 2 months, 3 months. So we need to identify all our basic processes, all policies from scratch and make them included as a part in those. And this many times will be very contradictory in nature. So we'll have to live with contradictions. At one point, you want your employees for long term, you want them for lifelong in your organizations. And here is a set of organization, a set of people where you will tell them, okay, let's shake hands and you'll be off in 3 months' time. So this is a contradiction that we'll have to build in and address in all the policies. So that is where I find that whole challenge. When how do you look at that person when he says, "Sir, I would like to be a part of your team overall." So those systems, how we handle them, how we take care of the grievances, how we engage them, how we appraise them, everything will have to be rewritten. So if you ask me one policy, I'll say 100% of the policies in organizations need to be rewritten at this time.
Absolutely,
Simple.
absolutely, Sunil. Yeah. Thank you, Sunil. That was actually the point to be made here, and the basis of the conversation that we are having here. It all starts with changes inside and outside of the organization, where the change will actually happen. So, Nilab, before we move further, I'd like to, maybe take a step back again, and from your perspective, because you work across all industries, sectors, and all. If you can, maybe touch upon the kind of workplace setups, all these policy changes, and we're talking about the kind of workplace setup that would be, aligned with the gig workers which we are employing at this moment, and maybe in the future as well.
Absolutely. So, just a distinction, we mostly work at the entry level and blue collar workspace. But what Sunil and Amit are saying are extremely relevant across. One, having a level playing field, or the outlook itself, the lenses that you look at should be the same. You should not be donning a different set of lenses the moment a gig worker comes in front of you. And secondly, one thing that we have seen, which is also how to give a better workplace environment, is clear progression if it is available. We have two sets of people. One might be looking at it sporadically, but someone is also inclined towards growth and is just trying out as an interface as far as the organization is concerned. So a growth path or a path to become a full-time employee or contribute more in different aspects of the business is something which would ensure that we are providing a better balanced workspace. And why is this important? We go with the mantra when we go and we work with employers of worker success. And this more and more employers are realizing this is important, because most gig workers, if you see, be it on the platform, be it in customer sales, be it at counter sales or retail sales, are the first touch of contact with the customer, the end customer. And it becomes important to try and look and orient the organization towards their success, because that's where the first feedback loop starts or ends. One, from a blue collar perspective, predictability of work and visibility of work is extremely important, because while this might not be the only source, this is a significant source of how they will make money, even if they're straddling between 2 or 3 roles. So that becomes important. Again, it's a contradiction, because if you are predicting completely 30 days a month, it's a full-time employees, but some level of predictability or understanding. Technology again helps them. Sometimes they are also working on 2 platforms. So that becomes an added advantage, but an assurance of a certain slot or number of slot definitely helps them. Enhanced earning potential. There's, from the business side, flex workforce helps organizations to scale more efficiently. And organizations are looking at sharing some part of that earning or benefit with employers and with workers in terms of enhanced earning capability and better frequency of earnings. If I'm just having not 30 days predictability of work, working for a week or 15 days, a better frequency, not the normal 30-day cycle, a weekly cycle or fortnightly cycle. In fact, from our side, we have also taken a step further, where we have tied up and we are providing early wage access to gig workers in case they are working through our platform, which we try and provide to employers for the entire month. And the cycle is longer than what would help the employer. We try and provide EWA to some of these workers. And largely, obviously, potential to have more participation within the organization as a level playing field in terms of skilling, training, growth. That would definitely help the entire ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you, Nilab, for sharing those points with us. They were very much given to the information, the kind of workplaces we are looking at for gig workers. So, Nilab, I would like to, extend that this conversation with you only here, because I like to build upon the case. Like talked about all these scopes and the kind of policies and practices the organization need to, the changes that should be there in the organizations. So we did talk about all these things, but are the only challenges which you're talking about in terms of policies and all? Are there more to the challenges when we talk about gig workers? And if we talk about challenges, there are certain audience questions, not actually questions. There are the concerns basis the data security and organization culture, and also if we can club this together, and I'll have your opinion here on the kind of challenges that gig workforce brings in.
Agreed. So I think there are two clear paradigm shifts that are happening. One, the gig worker is coming more in front, is interacting with the organizations, and organizations are having, like Sunil and Amit said, a significant, or are looking at a significant portion of their workforce coming from gigs. So it becomes important to address the challenges head on. One definitely is from the organization reliability that you are sharing, and reliability in 2 or 3 parts. Reliability, firstly, from a perspective of, will this person turn up the next day? Or in case I'm giving him or her an important job, can I find this person to be reliable as far as a longer, for a next week or next 15 days? And it's on the both side. I think it's like a chicken and egg situation. But my perspective is, if you try and work towards worker success, provide them a balanced workspace, they are here to make money and contribute to the organization. But this reliability is something that they look at. If I look at it at granular level from a platform player or other perspective, it's pretty simple. They try and use it as a marketplace, and they use the strengths of the marketplace, which might not be available if we are trying to look at it from a retail outlet perspective. You can't try and build a marketplace at a specific retail outlet. So you will have to get more invested when you're trying to look at organization reliability. Other thing which is extremely important is that, imagine if I'm having a person who's there for 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. Time is of the essence. You can't have the same onboarding or training cycle which are there. One is try and pick up people from fungible roles, as long as they're not working with competition. But quick onboarding and hiring tats become extremely important. And what we have seen is that if we are able to do some level of predictability of a person's success before he gets hired, that helps. Might not be a relevant example from a white collar perspective, but if you look at from the entry, the 25,000-30,000 salary, location becomes very important. Location from where they're commuting, location where they have worked earlier. So we have a clear recommendation engine as far as our hiring part of the platform is concerned. It typically picks up 25-30 factors. But when we started working towards gig workforce, we started putting higher preference or higher weightage to location of where the person has worked before or where the person is commuting from. That clearly translates into better worker success. Continuous training and skilling, enabling the worker, both training for onboarding. In fact, some level of training can happen moment the offer letter is generated. You can try and provide them access to bite-sized, simple learnings so that they know what they're expecting on the job, because they have to be, if I am working for 15 days or 30 days, I have to be productive from day one. You can't expect the traditional cycle where you become productive more after a fortnight, because by that time the person might be looking at another gig. The last one, which everybody is addressing and which is a big challenge as far as gig platform is concerned, is attrition and churn on the platform. I think we are early there. While we have clear acceptance for the gig workforce, it's still something which people are experimenting with, and it will still require more investment from both sides to solidify that. But that's a significant challenge that we see as far as attrition and churn on the platforms or for gig workers is concerned.
So thank you, Nilab. And Amit, I would like to extend the same question to you on the challenges, because I could see that there are a lot of concerns here from the audience as well in terms of the challenges the gig workforce faces. And so they're talking about the financial guarantees, the job security, even the mental and the physical health of gig workers. And also if you can touch upon those points here.
Yeah, so look, I think first of all, gig workers is, when we use the term gig workers overall, it's almost like saying Indians, like it's like 130 crore of us, right? So the point is, from a categorization perspective also, there are different types of gig workers, right? And a large part of what we've discussed so far is, for the want of a better word, we are almost using these like commodities, right? Which is like, we are throwing bodies to solve the problem, right? Now, what will happen is, we must understand over a period of time, and this is forgive me if this sounds provocative, is that a lot of these jobs will effectively get rendered redundant by technology, because these are repetitive. These are, I think Nilab made a great point about these needing to be predictable, right? So a lot of these jobs will eventually get replaced by technology. At some stage, it may take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, depending on where we are. From a gig worker's perspective, what happens is, I think if we step back for a minute and say, what do they expect? If they expect, particularly, I would say financial, physical and mental security, I think it is incumbent on any employer to definitely provide it. And I think that's where I say that the moment you start making a distinction because a person is going to be with you for a short period of time, then that's where you'll always have a problem. Now, very often, and that's the challenge we have when we look at these like commodities, we look at this as cost. In my view, the time has come for us to start looking at this as investment. Now, earlier, for example, you had this whole concept of, you could have PF at one place, then PF at another place. Now you've created a UAN, right? You've created a standard platform through which you can easily do it from one place to the other, et cetera, et cetera. I think particularly for things like health, because I think in the absence of a social security and a health and a public health system actually in India, I think that is fundamentally the most important piece. And my hypothesis always has been that if you are able to provide a lot more of that, even if it means a slightly lower salary, it's possible that you will be able to attract a particular set of people for whom this is important. So in my view, I think the challenge is we don't provide enough flexibility. So what I'm saying is that if you are able to offer a bouquet and say, look, this is what I can provide you. Now, within this, if you'd like to take more as cash, please go ahead and take it. If you'd like to take more in terms of insurance, because that's important for you, go ahead and take it. I think providing some degree of flexibility is one thing that in my view should always be done. And that is, to answer the question that you raised originally, that is one big challenge, which is we don't provide that flexibility in terms of structure, in terms of how people look at it, etc. I think the second big challenge is that we see these as disposable commodities, right? And I think Sunil made that point earlier. These are people who are aspiring to make a career, right? The moment we start looking at them as being there for a short period of time, it's almost like speed dating, right? You do it and then, in a couple of minutes, it's over and you move on. The point is, if you're willing to invest a little bit more, you'll find that from an aspiration perspective, right? Particularly in the growing India, people want to have opportunities to learn and grow. And I think that is a big challenge. That is something that we don't provide enough of. Now, one could argue that all of these things require resources, but I keep coming back to my original point that these are all really investments. It's like today, if you go into any village or any tier 4 city in India, you'll find three things, right? You'll find an English medium school, you'll find a beauty parlor, and you'll find people who are wearing jeans. And this is an indication of aspiration that people have in the country, right? So, and if these are the people who are going to form a portion of your gig workforce as you're continuously expanding, the only way to meet those aspirations is to be able to give some degree of assurance to people. What it automatically therefore does is it puts the pressure, if I'm use the term of performance, because then people know that you are assured of this if you continue to do your job. So I think the big challenges, again, the way I see them is that we've got a standard one size fits all model, right? If you are able to experiment with a little bit of flexibility, with a little bit of technology to be able to offer that, we should be able to kind of work through. I think on the whole point of how is it that you'll manage security, how is it all of these are eminently solvable problems. I know today we say information is the new oil, right? In a lot of ways, but none of this is unmanageable. See, the problem is we tend to make examples of situations where people have done wrong, right? Or where the security system has failed. Let us recognize that 95% of systems, 95% of people, 95% of everything that happens in the world today is good. Right. So we can either take an approach to say, because 5% is not working, let's penalize the balance 95% by saying we will not do it. Or we can say that let's make an example of the 5% so that the 95% know that what they are doing is the right thing. So to my mind, this messaging, being able to land this messaging, even with gig workers as they're coming in, is a good starting point. So it's not entirely just about challenges. I think the challenges are more also at our end in terms of how is it that we approach this from an investment perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Amit. Those are some great points that you have made. Sunil, I would like to come to you here. And we did talk about technology briefly, and no conversation these days is complete without, talking about the technology's role in every aspect of work, actually. But specifically in this conversation, we did talk about in various contexts. But when you talk about the role of technology and how it has evolved, maybe, and maybe help the gig workers to bring them on the forefront and in the center of the organization. What role does that exactly played in here?
Yeah, actually, my take on this question, technology, I think, has helped both sides. Uh, the gig worker who's on one side having a mobile and he has a reasonably good internet connection, he has that part. And then organizations on the other hand, if you were to just go back maybe 5 7 years back, as I said, gig workers have been there. Seasonality in business has been there. We have been scaling up and down, but before maybe 4 5 years back, it was all a very Excel based, or it's a very personalized. You had these people who would go at the gate, and they would call. You will see a lot of people crowding, and they had passbooks, and that's how we had a very informal way of managing the people who you brought in. I'm talking about the blue collar category as of now. But with technology coming in, you have, as I would say, you are able to kind of showcase what kind of what is the period which you are looking for, what your skill sets you are looking for. Because till now, frankly, the sourcing is questionable of such people. You have some kind of the so-called agents who are exploiting both sides. They're exploiting the workmen, they're exploiting you. Technology is bringing in that transparency. The worker who's coming, who's getting onboarded, he knows the amount of money he's going to get, and when he's going to get, and what are the kind of facilities they're going to get. And technology is doing away with the middlemen. Because just to give an example, for LG, during our season, say the summer seasons, when the sale of ACs and refrigerators just goes through the roof, that's a time where we will have to increase in certain sections. People who are selling our ACs by threefold. So for a period of just 3 months, February, March, April, May, around that time. So the sourcing would happen through some agent, some people sitting somewhere, and he'll bring you. You will have to, the skill sets will be questionable. So technology has brought in that transparency. It has brought in a kind of, I have a history of that guy, where all he's worked, where all he's served earlier. I'm able to do a proper match. I'm able to show him, okay, this job is available from X date to Y date. So that has also improved on the retention of these people. Okay, exits still remain pretty high, because as soon as they seem to get a new, towards the end of their contract period, when they see that there is another role coming up, so they'll do. So all those problems will stay. But technology has brought in transparency on both sides. Secondly, it has brought in that speed you wanted. Third, it has brought in that element of quality people which are getting onboarded for various such roles. Third, at the back end, as management, I have complete, how should I say, visibility of my manning levels, the vacancies, because it would have been very traditionally during these peak seasons, the production blaming HR blaming sales. So that thing gets sorted out. And I think a lot of semblance has come to this madness of hiring and onboarding of the gig workers at the blue collar level. So that's where I see technology being a boon for both sides and all stakeholders who are in this piece. And also it brings in your litigations, and in terms of the visibility of records, and everything is brought to a level of semblance. That's how I see it as a practitioner who has to deal with the large number of such gig workers in my role. That's my take.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunil. Nilab, your perspective here on the role of technology when we talk about the gig universe.
Agreed. So we are essentially a technology provider. So completely up my street. Yeah, I think definitely first thing what it has done is it's formalized the entire play. So we today have a formalized gig workforce, which if you go deeper and you see it, it's at a hyper local level, which I already shared. So the technology has ensured that for matchmaking, everything is happening on a pin code level. That's essentially the way we also approach. Beyond that, clearly 2 or 3 factors which show where technology has a higher play. A lot of time these workers are remote. Secondly, they might be doing 2 or 3 jobs, and time is of an essence. So technology essentially is helping building all the components. One is obviously the hiring part. A level of onboarding, training, and onboarding is contactless, so that I know I am straight away. We can't go through that formal route if the person will be there for 15 days. To have 3 to 5 days training, or for him to first report to the central office, then get allocated. This entire allocation of work to ensuring that the individual is available for the first task on day 0 is enabled essentially through technology. Other components like managing payroll and providing them a regular view, because that's very important for them to understand not only the earning potential, what has been their earning in the past. That's how they would be able to plan it. That also technology is able to provide that as a very seamless journey. I think 2 other points that I would like to share beyond these obvious points is what Sunil also touched upon. It's very important when we are trying to scale this model to have the right person to hire. For instance, we at BetterPlace, we have a blue collar employee verification system. We try and provide up to 15 checks for employers who are trying to engage with this workforce, so that they can get a complete view from the part of the previous employer history to their ID and address verification. So that is very important when we are dealing with sensitive customer deliveries or orders, or interacting with customers. A single technology platform, it can provide it in terms of data analytics or dashboards, or smart dashboards becomes important. And secondly, definitely is enabling the worker as the worker continues to interact. Organization priorities will change. And once the worker is onboarded, we have to ensure that this remote worker who's spending say 3 to 4 hours is as abreast with organization priorities as a full-time worker would be. So skilling in the form of mobile-based learning or byte learning becomes very important. I'll just give you a couple of examples here. So we work with a lot of food players, and what we have observed is that not only the delivery partner, but even at the restaurant, when somebody's packaging, sensitivity of packaging, ensuring that the shelf life of the food changes becomes a very important thing. So some of these players have created more like an online web-based support desk. At any point, if somebody is faltering or not able to understand, a new packaging material has come, they can quickly go through a 3-minute, 5-minute video, go through the assessment, and be ready to ensure that the package is safe and best place for delivery. So skilling from a support training perspective, or up to the job as market or external environment changes, is also largely influenced and enabled through technology today.
Thank you, Nilab, and thank you for backing it with examples as well. So Amit, I would like to move to you here. We talked about the scope, we talked about the trends, we talked about the challenges, the role of technology. Let's talk about the opportunities now. And I would like to understand from you how to utilize this opportunity for both gig workers and organizations. And I'll also like to club in one of the audience questions here, which is kind of aligned to this question, where they're asking about, do gig workers also contribute to bring forth new opportunities to the organization?
Yeah, so I think the biggest opportunity that I see, and again, I mean, maybe we can talk of gig workers in maybe 3 categories, right? Maybe there are what you call as professional services gig workers, right? Professionally highly skilled. And then there could be those who work on a platform. And then there are, obviously those who might be working, if I may use the term, offline or, on front end. If you were to look at it from a professional high skilled segment, it's like now, interestingly, organizations are hiring, for example, a CFO for a 6-month period, right? To say that, there is a particular thing that needs to be done. I'd like you to come in, fix this and move on. Now, this was unthinkable some time ago, right? So the whole point is that the opportunity that organizations and individuals have really is around flexibility. Because what's happening is this whole issues of burnout, what is it that people are seeking, what is really important to them at a particular point in time in their life, is becoming of increasing significance. This has always been there in the West, but it's now, significantly strong in India. So I think, like everyone had mentioned earlier, there is no longer a stigma that's associated with working part-time or not working full-time on the roles of the company, right? In some way. So I think the biggest opportunity, therefore, is to be able to leverage on capabilities that exist in the workforce that organizations really lack. There is an acute shortage of talent in several areas. And if you were to expand the pool, right, to be able to include gig workers who basically look at flexibility and are like I said, are able to provide those outcomes in short periods of time, simply because that's the nature of their engagement that they will have, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It's like, there was someone I had to go, there's someone who I'd been in touch with over a period of time, and most appointments for her, there's a senior executive, in the industry, and most of the appointments used to get routed through her executive assistant, right? And obviously the EA was always available. I had a chat, said okay, etc. So one day, then I went over to the office to meet this executive, and I just said, let me say hello to the EA, right? And she said that no, but she's not in office today. I said, okay, so whenever she's here next, let me know. She's saying she hasn't come to office for the last 3 years. I said, what? Saying, yeah, she never works out of office. She never comes to the office at all. She works completely from home. And believe me, I mean, I was surprised, because not once did I ever experience in a conversation with the EA, the phone was picked up on the first ring. It was always available, So I'm saying that those kind of experiences, if you're able to provide. Now, it's possible that if you said that you have to be in the office, you have to work specific hours, you have to do this in a particular way, maybe you would have lost this talent. So the opportunity for organizations is to be able to leverage that. I think that's the biggest plug, that's available. Similarly, we were looking at someone who would do some temp hiring for us for a while on the talent acquisition field. We went through the whole interview, and then, at the end of the conversation, I got to know that she's actually going to be based in the UK. And I had no idea. And I said, listen, how will it work if you're in the UK? She said, it's 4.5 hours of difference. I'm okay to start at 5 a.m. My time, which is 9:30 your time. I'll work in this time. So I think sometimes you just have to open your mind to the amount of possibilities that it, kind of provides at that, for the professional skilled segment that's there. I think for everyone else, it's the aspiration of being able to provide an environment that provides continued learning, particularly because, like I said, no one wants to do a job that can get taken over by technology for their life. They're hungrier. They're looking at, what are the greatest skills that are required. So how is it that we are able to equip people to get greater skills, as we are kind of moving forward, I think is the second biggest opportunity. The third biggest opportunity, and I may have said this before, is we have to view this as investment and not as cost, right? Because as a corporate, we have a responsibility towards being able to build this nation, because we will otherwise face what was considered to be a significant advantage, which I think will become a demographic disadvantage. We will have so many young people and we will not have enough jobs unless we are able to adequately leverage the flexibility that a gig economy offers. So if we are able to kind of get that balance right, to be able to do it. And it can be so strongly enabled by technology, by allowing people to work from wherever they need to. I do agree that there are certain, the whole point is we've got to trust the system. We've got to trust people. Mistakes will happen. Challenges will take place. But forgive me if there is anybody who's from internal audit on the call, but we can't take an internal audit view, right? We are not here to find mistakes. We are here to see what is working. So I think these three opportunities that are there, and I think the responsibility that we have to be able to build this country, we are already suffering the challenges of climate change, right? And I always say we have not inherited this world from our parents, we have borrowed it from our children. The only way we can do this is if we are able to leverage the strength that the gig economy offers, that rural India offers, and the proof of the pudding that when you're able to provide opportunity, people will grab it with both hands and do exceedingly well. And if you look at the composition of the Indian cricket team 5 years ago, right, you would never, or 10 years ago, who would have expected that you would have somebody from Jharkhand, someone from Muzaffarpur, someone from cities that you have not heard of earlier, right? So this is only, I think, the gig economy essentially offers a platform that allows you equality of opportunity. And I think that's the biggest advantage we have. We should seek equality of opportunity, not equality of outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the platform can essentially offer at three levels.
Yeah, sure, Amit. Sunil, I would like your thoughts here on the opportunities, obviously, but I'd also like to plug in one audience question, which is kind of aligned to this. So they're asking if, do you think if gig workers can help with the challenges that the industry is facing in retaining the best talent? So we talk about opportunities and if they can also bring forth something on retaining the talent.
Apeksha, I see there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of benefits, a lot of merits. It's actually a win-win situation for both. The people who are looking for some kind of a balance, who are looking for some kind of temporary work assignments. So I think this is going to be a tool, a manpower planning tool, or for your onboarding tools, for your recruitment tools. So I see it as a win-win solution to many of the problems. So just coming first, I'll also relate to the audience question about, is it a solution for your iteration? More than a solution for iteration, I have used it very well for onboarding people when an attrition happened suddenly and I needed to bring in a head count immediately so that my timelines for whatever project deliveries were not affected. Since based on the people whom I have taken in the past in such temporary roles, I had them some kind of an internal system of their evaluations, their outputs. So I was able to plug in from that pool. I didn't have to go through extensive interviews. They were already tested out and I just reached out to them. Hey, there is this role. Would you be interested? So that part. Secondly, there is for certain times, like for example, if I have a legal department, which is not my main function, but it's a very specialist role. I have only 2 or 3 people. And if one person leaving at that time suddenly will let a lot of things just go to the, it'll just functions will get no outputs will roll. So for those specialist functions, I see this as a solution which immediately you are able to plug in because at that time you were looking for specialists. So having said that, we've had a lot of discussions about the advantages, flexibility. It gives you flexibility. It gives you cost merit. You are able to bring in people who you cannot hire in the so-called your salary domains, your company policies, and comparisons to be made with other people who are there on the roles and things like that. It gives you that flexibility to bring in those skill sets which traditionally you would shy away from. It gives you earlier, especially coming from the blue collar perspective, there were a lot of restrictions by our labor laws. I could not hire people. We would find what I would call as backdoor entry routes for bringing in. So we would hire them through a contractor, show them in a job role and things like that. But government, having realized, has defined it as a separate category of workmen in the new labor codes, means I get the flexibility I was needing. So these are the advantages I see. The only thing we'll have to figure it out, how do we manage them and manage them effectively, because there'll be a set of challenges as well. The challenges related to the retention, challenges related to their engagement with the company. It'll be more of a business relationship rather than an emotional bonds that you would be wanting and things like that. So while we see a lot of merits, a lot of opportunities, we will have to manage the challenges which goes on with anything. So anything which is good for you also has some side effects. So you will have to manage this equation to get the real outputs. And technology, I feel, is one of the solutions for managing the contradictions or managing the challenges which come with this category of workmen.
Thank you, Sunil.
That's
Thank
my
Yeah. Thank you for bringing both those points on the table. Nilab, as we conclude this session, your final concluding remarks on the opportunities, obviously, and while I'll plug in the last audience question here for you, we talked about opportunities a lot and building on those opportunities and stuff. The question is, while gig is a global phenomenon, do you think that Indian organizations are well equipped to capitalize on?
Agreed. So I think the audience question also, I think I can subsume in when we are discussing about opportunities. So what we are seeing obviously is a pretty solid wave, definitely waiting for a tsunami. But what does it bring to the table or bring in front is what's important. In terms of opportunities, and I will talk about again specific use cases because that's the best way to address it. Today, we are in discussion with certain organizations who today are trying to explore how can they go beyond their normal dealer network into new territories, into new distributors or dealers, thanks to the fact that we have today a capability of building a gig workforce. The whole business calculations have started being addressed differently. We today have a situation where an organization, when they're looking at opening a new retail outlet, or they're trying to go and get entry into modern trade, they're trying to look at influencers or their counter sales workforce as a mix of both fixed and flex workers or gig workers. This gives them a separate set of flexibility to expand and scale and get into territories which were not thinkable earlier. Who could have thought 30% or 40% of e-commerce uptake will come from beyond the top 10 cities in the country, or a Zomato or a Swiggy will be available in 50 or 70 or planning to go for 100 countries. This flexibility and scale has come, and these opportunities only solidify beyond what we know as obvious. Even we can only try and estimate or predict, but I don't think we have the complete picture of where all this can take further depth. And as Sunil has a couple of times repeated, this is nothing new. It's already always been there. Be it the complete construction industry or manufacturing industry, that has always relied on this scale. It's only that we are today finding a formal way, and we are trying to use technology to manage it, which is essentially providing the right visibility and predictability. Coming to the point of how will we move forward and how we will try and see it taking greater shape in India, I think one clearly, we started out with those numbers that if we are saying and we are predicting that 5%, 4.5% or 5.5% of the available workforce by the turn of the decade will be in gig, definitely it will provide a very strong impetus for organizations and all stakeholders to try and work towards ensuring that it is successful. A couple of things which would be important. Organizations, when they're looking at it in their calculations, will have to keep worker success in mind. And I think a social security net, which the labor codes have also predicted, trying to provide them and look after their well-being in terms of basic accident or health insurance would be important. If all stakeholders come together towards this larger aim, I think this will help both in ensuring the demographic dividend is there. We reach beyond India to Bharat and have deeper inroads as far as our ambitions are concerned.
Thank you, Nilab. And with this, we have come to the end of this session. This has been one great conversation with some great insights, a lot of information, some great examples, and best practices that has been shared on the forum today. Thank you, Amit, Sunil, and Nilab for joining us at this conversation, at this discussion today. And it has been a pleasure hosting you. Also, a big thank you to the very patient and interactive audience that we had today. Thank you for being an active participant in this discussion today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.